Welcome and good evening, everyone. For those joining us from East Africa, um, I hope you're all doing well. Thank you very much for joining us for the 22nd version of our Nile Science Wednesdays. Um, we are going to start in the next few. I would just like to say a couple of hellos for those who have just joined us. In the meantime, feel free to type in the chat box. Please let us know your name, your country, your organization, your profession, and the hashtags you can use for social media today are Sci Wednesdays, Nile, and taggers at InfoNile. I have just typed the same on the chat box. Please check it out. Good evening once again for those who have just joined us. I can see Nyamiti Kayora, you joined us earlier. Thank you very much for joining us. I can see Suzanne, a very added follow of our Science Wednesday. Hi, Suzanne. I hope you're fine. Hi, Michelle. Hi, Jonas Kiriko. Hi, Rachel. Catherine.
Hi,
Teresa.
hi.
So yeah, that is. I'm so happy to see you all here. Please feel free to type in your name in the chat box. Please write in your name, your country, your organization, if you don't mind, and your occupation. I can also see Emmanuel Fantini has joined us from IHE Delft. Hi, Emmanuel. I hope you're doing well. Thank you very much for joining us for this session of Nile Science Wednesdays. We are going to start in the next few, like I had mentioned. But first, my name is Daily Sive. I work at InfoNile under Water Africa as the communications officer. InfoNile is a cross-border platform of cross-border network of journalists across the Nile basin. We cover stories on water and the environment, and this entails stories on fisheries, water, climate change, um, biodiversity, forestry, agriculture, etc., etc., name it, anything related to water and the environment, you'll be sure to find us there. So we came up with Nile Science Wednesdays, such as this being the 22nd version. Nile Science Wednesday is a network, or rather, or a program that we developed under the Nile platform, which seeks to bridge the gap between journalists and scientists in the environmental sector. And we facilitate both learning and networking of um, both professions to ensure that the stories that are covered are credible, accurate, and both based on data and facts, basically facts. So we hope at the end of this session, you're going to learn something new, you're going to develop story ideas out of what you learn. So for today's session, we're going to launch one of our cross-border sessions, cross-border stories called Polluted by the Guardians, just by the name. This story is a story on Lake Victoria, which is being polluted by the Guardians. And you could be asking yourself, who are the Guardians? Guardians are both me and you, the people using the lake, people working in the policy departments. Those are the guardians, you and I and everyone else, all the stakeholders related to Lake Victoria, all of us are contributing to pollution of Lake Victoria. So probably just a brief of what Polluted by the Guardians is all about in a few. So this is a investigation we did on both Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, and this is based on the fact that Lake Victoria is under severe environmental pressure from plastic pollution, human and industrial waste. All of this threaten the aquatic ecosystem and human health of the people dependent on this lake. So plastics, as we did this investigation, we realized that plastics ranging from bottles, bags, footwear, and even plastic canoes, they enter the lake through rivers and they accumulate along the shores of Lake Victoria, all observed in the three countries, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. And these pollutants break down into microplastics, which have also been found in fish that end up being consumed by local communities, thereby causing serious health concerns. So, even as we were doing this research, we decided to do water quality assessments in the three countries, and these assessments revealed high levels of contaminants such as E. coli, there is lead, nitrogen, and industrial waste, all of which lead to oxygen depletion and reduction of fish populations. So even as this is ongoing, we also realize that illegal and unsustainable fishing practices, such as the use of banned gear and destructive methods, are worsening the crisis further. And this has also led to the depletion of fish stocks and also harmed the breeding grounds for these fish. And we also noted that despite laws on pollution and regulated fishing, enforcement of the laws that have already been set have remained to be very weak. But local authorities and environmental organizations like EMEDO are stepping up to create awareness campaigns and partnerships to combat both issues and protect the lake's future. So for those who are just joining us, please feel free to type in the chat box, like I just mentioned, your name, your country, organization, and your profession. Before we start, I'm going to play a video. I'm going to ask Andrew, my colleague, to play a video. This video is going to give us a brief of what this investigation entails. So kindly follow through keenly and be sure to ask your questions at the end of the session. After the video, we're going to have a panel discussion with representatives from each of the three countries, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. We were not able to host all the journalists. This investigation was done by 20 journalists and data scientists and even data analysts and scientists that work on this story, but we're not able to host everyone. So the panel that you're going to see today is just a representation of the entire team, but all credits goes to the 20 participants that made this investigation come true. So Andrew, I hope you're ready.
Very ready, very ready.
Okay, please, the floor is yours. Please lead us through the video.
More than 14 million people use Lake Victoria, and it is choking on pollution. InfoNile conducted a 2-year investigation into the impacts of pollution on health, biodiversity along the shores of Lake Victoria in Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. This investigation, funded by the JRS Biodiversity Foundation, involved collecting and analyzing water samples from the shores of the 3 countries. In Uganda alone, 9.948 tons of plastic waste are uncollected annually, and 11% of this goes into the water. In Kenya, pollution from agricultural activities pollutes the lake at about 40%, followed by domestic waste at 30%. Lake pollution has increased due to wetland degradation and unmanaged waste, harming the ecosystem and aquatic life. In all 3 countries, positive E. coli and totocoliform results indicated that the lake water is contaminated by bacteria from fecal elements that pose risks of waterborne diseases. Coliforms and E. coli are bacteria from feces. The presence of E. coli in water sample indicates possible sewage or manure contamination, which can cause waterborne diseases like typhoid and cholera. Kenya and Uganda had chemical oxygen demand, COD, above the recommended ranges, and in Tanzania, high biochemical oxygen demand, BOD values, were detected near the point where the Miringo River drains into Lake Victoria. Chemical oxygen demand, COD, is the amount of oxygen needed to oxidize the organic matter present in water. The higher the COD value, the more serious the water pollution. Overall, the findings in Kenya show the level of chemicals that has been progressively increasing from earlier studies. Lead highly toxic to humans, was found at all sampling points in Tanzania and several near Kisumu Railway Harbour in Kenya. In Uganda, parameters like biochemical oxygen demand, phosphorus, lead, and cadmium showed similar values or slight improvement compared to 2013. These nutrient pollutants make water unfit for its purpose, especially for human consumption and aquatic life. Lake Victoria fish stocks are declining due to overfishing, invasive species like water hyacinths, climate change, and increasing pollution, including microplastics. Microplastics, pharmaceutical pollutants, and e-waste from devices like phones and TVs are emerging contaminants. Since these pollutants are new, analysts say the current water treatment systems cannot treat some new kinds of waste, such as plastic pollutants in wastewater. This is because they were not incorporated into the design of existing water treatment plants. The 3 lake-bordering countries have established laws that protect water sources and the environment, including controlling pollution. Despite these laws and institutions, pollution is still dumped into the lake and its tributary rivers in all 3 countries, mostly with impunity.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I hope we have all gotten something out of what Andrew has just shared with us. So, with us we have 6 panelists, all of which participated in the production of this cross-border investigative story. So, I'm going to quickly ask them to introduce themselves. Please turn on your video. Please let us know your name, your country, your area of specialization, and your media organization, if you don't mind, or science institution. So I'm going to start with Tanzania. We had Yohani.
Hi everyone. My name is Yohani Gumbai. I'm an investigative journalist from Tanzania. I'm working with land dwellers as an investigative editor.
Okay, thank you so much, Yohani. We're going to briefly move to Uganda. Sarah.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Sarah Misho. I am a journalist in Uganda. I report mostly on the environment. I own an online news company called the UG Post. I am glad to be joining you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We are glad to have you with us. And from Kenya, we had 3 journalists. One is Robert.
Yes. How are you, everyone? My name is Robert Amalemba from Kenya. I'm a seasoned journalist, an editor, and a writer. I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much. And sorry, I'm in a chaotic place, and I also have a chaotic phone with a very bad camera. The other one is down. Sorry for that, please.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Sharon. Sharon Phoebe Atieno.
Hi everyone, my name is Sharon Atieno. I'm a journalist at Science Africa. I do science journalism, so I cover environment and climate change, among other topics. It's a pleasure to work with InfoNile on this story. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sharon. And then lastly, from Kenya, we have Kevin Omolo.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Kevin Omolo. I'm also a journalist based in Kisumu, Kenya. I work with Lake Region Bulletin, and I do a lot of science-related stories. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Kevin. And to crown the efforts of all these journalists, we had the input of scientists from Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. And the scientist in the house that will represent them today is Dr. Christopher Aura. Thank you so much, Dr. Chris. Kindly introduce yourself and your area of specialization.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Christopher Landaura. I'm the director in charge of freshwater systems research in Kenya, and in particular from Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute. My area of specialization, I'm an environmental and ecological modeler. That's my area, although I cover other areas as required. Thank you, and pleasure to meet you all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Chris, and even for accepting to join us despite your busy schedule. We really appreciate. So I'll quickly go through the questions, and first question goes to all the journalists. I know as you were doing these stories, you spoke to several people whose livelihoods depend on Lake Victoria. So I'm going to start with Sharon. What stood out to you most during these conversations, and how did they shape your reporting?
Hi, Delicate. So, what stood out to me most is the fact that fishermen are willing to do the right thing. Our story, I worked on this story with Mary Mwendwa. We focused on how illegalities is affecting fish populations in Lake Victoria, focusing on two main beaches, Usenge Beach and Mageta Beach in Siaya County. And we found that fishermen are willing to do the right thing if they are channeled in the right direction, because we were being told that there are trainings that are ongoing by the BMUs to teach them on which kind of nets to use that are required. They're willing to use them, but also the government has to come in and sort of help them by maybe subsidizing the prices of the legal nets so that they can adhere to the use of legal nets. That's what struck out most for us, that they are willing, but there has to be also that effort that comes in from the government to help them, because you find that illegal nets are more cheaper than the required nets. So that was what stood out for me most when doing this specific story. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. There was also some relationship to your story with what the team from Uganda did. Sarah, could you please let us know, as you spoke to these people, what stood out to you most as you were covering this story, and how did it shape your reporting of the Ugandan part of Lake Victoria?
Thank you so much. And not far from what Sharon said, we realized that we still have a very huge ignorant population compared to those who actually know what to do. Our first field visit was at a landing site in Jinja on the Nile, and we found people who were washing clothes, others were washing motorcycle. Then there were people drawing water, domestic use, all this. I thought that what they were doing was actually the right thing. With the person washing their motorcycle did not care about the one drawing water from the lake, to go and use for domestic purposes. So we found out that, yes, when we spoke to them, we talked about the detergent and micro and the nutrients and whatever that it puts into the lake, killing the fish. And people just looked at us like we were crazy. So we still have a huge population that is ignorant of what is going on. And I think maybe if we had more scientists on radios and TV explaining to people about such things that we think are so trivial, small things would be better. Yeah, but we also had people who knew what was going on, but they didn't care.
Oh, yeah, that is something very important to know, ignorance. I'd like at this point to invite Kevin Omolo. Kevin Omolo, you spoke a lot of the parts, the bit you reported was on human wildlife conflict. Could you please let us know how this shaped your narrative in the story you covered around Lake Victoria?
Thank you very much, Lee. I'm grateful to have been part of this. And first, I want to appreciate Dr. Aura. We worked a lot with him, and he was quite easy and always available. Now, with regards to my story focused on human-wildlife conflict. I had done stories around pollution before, but now bringing this story of pollution to the level that people can understand it, I had to look at a different angle. And by the time I was doing this, there was a lot of reports on people attacked by hippos and people attacked by crocodiles. And what was standing out was that a number of the areas where these animals are found, their ecosystem are destroyed by pollution and human activities. So they're coming out of water to find alternative places to find food. But now, what stood out for me was that in many instances, the residents that we spoke to, and a number of them that are living along the shores of Lake Victoria, have either had their kins attacked or someone they know having been attacked, killed, or injured by these animals. But most of them did not understand that these animals are not coming out because of leisure, but because their homes are disturbed and they're trying to find a solution. So, in my engagement with them, many of them were admitting that truly they just felt that it was the government that was not doing enough to keep the animals in water, not knowing that they were also contributing to this. So most of them didn't know that they really had a role in ensuring that these animals are safe in the water where they are, so that they can also be safe out of water. Thank you.
Okay, that is very important to note that pollution is actually contributing to human wildlife conflict. I'll go all the way to Tanzania. Yohani, please let us know how different your story was from the rest and how your investigation contributed to your approach to the narrative.
Thank you, everyone. Of course, what I've learned from this investigation is that there is the issue of the people are not aware, the local one, and like these fishers are not aware. For example, in Mwanza, in some areas we found that some of the fishermen are using these canoes made by plastic bottles, and of course there is the river here in Mwanza city, which is called Mirongo River, and the river is crossing up in Mwanza city, so it has these like plastic bags, plastic bottles, and a lot of e-waste, and they are all taken to Lake Victoria, and this common people do not.
Yohani, we seem to have lost you. I think let's quickly move to Robert. Sorry, Yohani.
Basically, from
Hello?
this local government.
Apologies for the technical mishap. I think, Yohani, we have lost you for a minute. So we're going to pass on the microphone to Robert. Robert, please let us know what stood out to you most from the conversations you
Okay, thank you very much, Deli.
had with the people,
Thank you very much.
depending on Lake Victoria.
Okay, thank you very much, Deli, and good evening. Now, what stood out while I was doing the piece, while we were actually doing the piece with the Harold Odhiambo, was that the deep frustration and helplessness among the residents who rely on the lake for especially fishing, farming, and domestic use. Many of the respondents we spoke to spoke of the declining fish stocks, increased waterborne diseases, and the rising human-wildlife conflict. And this really impacted our story, and this where we grounded our piece, because this resource is dependent on by a very huge population across several counties here in Kenya, starting from Kisumu, Siaya, Busia, and name it. So they were so much frustrated. They had nowhere to run to in case the lake, the chaos, the kind of, depleted fish stocks are to run to after to run to after the fish in the lake is depleted, and also they did have nowhere to run to, and even to raise their issues too in case they encountered these things to do with the human wildlife conflict and all that. That was really touching to me because actually as a people and as a resource, I think there ought to be measures, one, to safeguard the resource, and also measures by all these governments and county governments, especially in Kenya, to safeguard the peoples and where they get this resource, especially on this lake. That really stood out for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. I'm still going to come back to you. Then, on my second question, I would like you to start by telling us, as you are covering this story, what was the most challenging parts of your reporting on your reporting of the aspect of your story that you covered, and especially when you're trying to connect between scientific data with everyday community experience. Did you experience any challenges? And if you did, what were some of the challenges that you faced?
A very good question, Deli. The biggest challenge was bridging the gap between technical and fragmented environmental data and the lived realities of local communities. You see, the data, this data collected over time covering this resource that is Lake Victoria is so much fragmented, you cannot walk into any office, say in Kakamega, say in Busia, say in Kisumu, and get information in one whatever fold. You have to inquire. You go to Busia, they tell you run to Kakamega, get the info. Go to Kakamega, go to Kisumu, they tell you, we just cover a little bit. The one who was doing this is not in. And that was so frustrating. And especially scientific data often lacked updates or local specificity. And they could not specify, like they do a research on Lake Victoria, they could not specify from what, Lake Victoria is a very lengthy lake. So they don't specify the research, like saying human wildlife conflict. They don't specify. This kind of people attacks, where are they so much prone? Is it in Busia County where the lake passes, or is it in Kisumu, or is it in Siaya? That kind of specificity was not coming out clear.
Yeah.
Then aligning the two required, aligning that with whatever the fishermen actually had. Getting me?
Yeah, yeah, I'm getting you.
Also, this scientific data often lacked what I said, updates on or specificity, while community members spoke from personal experience. A guy just tells you, it is not, you could not even believe most of the accounts because most of them some were just, telling you what they had happened. To get a real case also very troublesome, but lucky enough, we found some very, very reliable sources, and we had to omit so much and that, makes it makes a first time guy on the ground to get, if you're not very keen, you'll get a very cooked up piece unless you go deep and
Okay,
specific.
so you said the most challenging bit was specificity of data and also linking the technical and scientific data that is very fragmented. Thank you so much for that. I'll quickly move to Uganda, and this question goes to Sarah. What was the most challenging aspect of your reporting? What would you highlight as the most challenging aspect?
Thank you. We were fresh out of a training when we went to the field. But still things were not as easy as they seemed, because for some of us, it was the first time doing a science training. And I remember we met some of the scientists like Dr. Were, who we actually worked with on our story. And before we went to the field, myself and my team, it was me, then there's Sarah Natoro is from UBC. We also had Innocent Navasa, and we had, who else was part of our story?
Barbara.
Barbara from Daily Monitor and Aloy. So it was the four of us. Before we went to the field, we figured we needed to understand more of these scientific terms. So we went and met with the scientist, Dr. Were at Makerere University, and he was actually our first interview. So we spoke to him about what we were to expect and what the story was about. And when we explained to him where we were going and what we expected to find, in fact, it is what we found. People, washing in the lake and using it for all those different things. He told us about something called nutrient pollution. And when we went, none of us thought of maybe first getting it in the local language and understanding what it means. So we get to the field and we are trying to explain to these people that, there is nutrient pollution. When you use these detergents, they cause a change in, the oxygen and what. And we are busy showing off our scientific languages, and these people don't understand us. So at first, it was really challenging. We felt like we were not being understood, and yet these people needed us to be their voice to represent them. Like I said, most of them are actually ignorant. They are not doing these things, making these mistakes because they know. They are making the mistakes because they actually don't know better. So informing our reporting was actually out of that, the ignorance, and saying that we will be the voice of the people. But then teaching them was a very challenging thing that we did not manage to do fully. But we hope that as we follow up, we'll do a better job. It was really challenging, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for highlighting that, Sarah. We have gotten that a couple of times. A translation of scientific jargon into local language is sometimes a challenge when you are doing these environmental stories. And I'll go to Yohani. I think Yohani has dropped off, but I can see one. He has two gadgets. Yohani, could you please let us know if you faced any challenge reporting this story on pollution when you're trying to connect scientific data and community experiences? What are some of the challenges you faced?
One of the challenges, like getting the data, official data from the government, and they are not like cooperative. And, somehow they fear like how are you going to use those data? So that's one of the challenge. And of course, one of the challenge was about how we use this. Like I'm not used to this kind of science reporting issues. Yes, I'm an environment journalist, but I'm not used to these jargons and these datas and all that kind of issues. So that was a bit challenging to me. So that's things I faced.
Okay, thank you so much for letting us know. So at least we know the challenges faced by the journalists from all the three countries, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. We'll quickly move on to the specific aspects of your stories. Um, my question goes to Kevin Omolo. As you were reporting your story, I noticed that you highlighted a couple of institutions, basically in the government, that are actually contributing to pollution of Lake Victoria. And while at it, we all know that reporting on institutions that doubles up as they're guardians, but are also doubling up as polluters can be very risky. Did you face any personal, professional dilemmas when you're covering these contradictions?
Yeah, thank you, Delhi. It's true that some of these guardians who are supposed to be taking care of the lake are contributing to pollution, either directly or indirectly. For example, I think one of the organizations that reached out to was NEMA, National Environmental Management Authority. In Kisumu and within the lake shores, all the counties, the towns within the lake shores have representation of this authority. And the biggest problem is that, just like Malemba was indicating, many of them lack data which can support the kind of work that they do, the achievement that they do, or they could be having, but they do not share. Because in some instances, there are areas where the communities have raised an alarm over pollution by some industries or some facilities which are directing waste into the water. But instead, these people have been doing their operations in some of these companies, but then you find that the situation remains the same. You're talking about institutions like Kiwasco, Kisumu Water and Sanitation Company, which is expected to be taking care of the sewer before it is released into water. And as you can remember, some of the results, really, some of the
Yes, yes, I
results,
can hear you.
yeah, some of the results which came from the research that was sponsored by InfoNile ended up showing that there were presence of E. coli in at the points where this organization was releasing waste into the lake. So you expect a water and sanitation company to be doing quite a lot in ensuring that the water is protected, while you discover that they're the ones who are releasing untreated water into the lake. So sometimes getting their comments with regards to some of these activities was a big challenge. And I remember, for example, speaking with Kenya Wildlife Services. Yes, you could have data, but you need someone to speak to the data and to speak to the information that you're getting from research. And I'm telling you, it took me 2 months to get a response from them. And the same would happen with the other organizations that feel basically you are doing a story to expose them, and your story has some form uh, of maligning that is targeting this organization. So this was a huge challenge, and it meant sometimes you had to just be patient. And for me, the project took over 8 months, and that means a lot of patience. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Kevin. Indeed, 8 months is a long time to be following up on a specific data set or a specific part of your story that is crucial to ensure that your story is complete in good time. And both you and Sarah have mentioned something to do with contamination or nutrients, excess nutrients contaminating the river or rather the lake. So my question goes to Dr. Chris. Could you please let us know from the water samples that we have seen in these stories, they showed an alarming level of fecal contamination and chemical pollutants. From a scientific standpoint, could you please let us know what are some of the urgent risks to the lake and the communities around it?
Thank you. Thank you once more for the question. Now, looking at the urgent risks, maybe just a small short sentence on the fecal contamination and chemical pollutants. Fecal contamination is measured in terms of E. coli or total coliforms. And these total coliforms emanates from sewage, that would be feces of even animals, human beings, etc. So therefore, this one ends up like, so when we are measuring the E. coli and total coliform, actually we are measuring coliform bacteria. And you understand the effect of bacteria, which in most cases, it leads to throat infections, blood infections, and other waterborne diseases. So allow me then to classify the risks in terms of environmental and socioeconomic risks. So the first one I've given is environmental risk of water contamination. So we actually now call it water contamination. Pollution and water contamination are different. To pollute is to disturb, but to contaminate is to have an effect in some sense. So one, we have that, water contamination, and therefore when we are having water contamination, the risk is using untreated water for either washing clothes, or remember you are a mother, you are washing clothes with contaminated water, and you have a young kid who will be like trying to, allow me to use the word to suck the cloth, to suck a small kid. You see the effect. You will get those bacteria. He will get throat infection or blood infection. So we don't expect to use untreated water, but because that's a risk, or cleaning even vehicles. I think this was stopped in Kisumu by enforcers some time back. Of course, cleaning the vehicles also leads to of lead. Lead is some heavy metal into the lead. That's another one. The other one is increased nutrient load. I think what you mentioned. Nutrient load is a very serious pollution effect or contamination effect. All lakes, rivers have a certain level of nutrients, that phosphorus and nitrogen, that is expected to be in them. But if it goes beyond, it becomes what we call hyper-eutrophication, or the nutrient level goes beyond. When it goes beyond, it leads to what we call the risk becomes formation of algal blooms. Algal blooms are green like minute plants that you see floating on a lake. And this is why you had most of these guardians talking about the lake has turned green. So if it is green, it's green algae. If it is red, it's photophyta. So that's another risk. The other risk is processing fish and other outputs before eating fish before processing. And now that would be very key. You have to boil it. It's not like now you are a Japanese, you are eating sushi. So that sushi, in fact, to train a sushi expert to cook, it is, some people even have a PhD in cooking sushi, by the way, because they follow these procedures that are expected. So processing, you have to use fish that is processed. The other one now on the environmental is destroying wetlands. That's also another urgent risk that is occurring. And of course, the illegal sand harvesting and illegal fishing that we mentioned, and fish mortalities and fish kills. These are environmental risks. But when you look at the social risks, we are talking about when we are having shrinking of breeding grounds. Breeding grounds are shrinking because the oxygen level is declining. The oxygen level covers a larger surface area, but if it's declining, the area is shrinking, therefore shrinking breeding grounds. So if we are having shrinking breeding grounds, we are expecting declining catches. If we are having declining catches, we are getting the cost of fish will go high, the cost of doing business will go high. These are the socioeconomic risks. We are also talking of increased cost of treating the water. So Kiwasco water treatment plants will continue to have this problem. And of course, the last risk is resource use conflicts, because the lake space is very limited. And it's good now in your piece, the one we've written on the pollutants, the guardians as the pollutants, we've talked about the spatial plan. So we have to plan this lake properly to ensure that we minimize the conflict. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Chris. I've learned quite a lot. There's contamination until that boils down to untreated water, increase in nutrient load, illegal sand harvesting, shrinking of breeding grounds, and resource use conflicts. Some of which have all been, actually, I think all of them have been covered in this story. Thank you so much for
Indeed.
highlighting that.
Indeed.
And maybe just to go back to Robert. Robert, are you still with us? Robert?
Yes, I'm still there, Delhi.
Okay. On the aspect of pollution, you mentioned pollution from rivers Wigwa, Auji, and Kisat. So, how can pollution from these rivers be effectively controlled to improve the water quality of Lake Victoria and to protect aquatic biodiversity?
Okay, thank you very much for the question, Delhi. I think measures to deal with this include establishing and enforcing waste water treatment for this in this resource, especially that especially across where residential areas are, where industries are, and also another bit will include restoring riparian buffers, because when you walk along this, Lake Victoria resource, you realize that there are no demarcations to tell the locals this is a riparian land, this is not riparian land. There are no such restrictions, and I think such demarcations should be there. And the government is also especially very reactive. If you do such stories, you'll tell them there are guys who've encroached along the lake. They'll come, chase them away, but will not go and do the very necessary step of restoring these riparian areas. And also, I think another thing they should do is that reduce plastic and sewage dumping, because it's so rampant in these areas. And also, I think another last thing they can do is launch catchment wider awareness, where they can be telling guys, well, this resource, for you to have it for the next 10 or so years, you have to protect it. And most of them, if this protection of this resource comes from the community, be a good thing, but that's rarely done because there is no such kind of a program to enlighten the people living across somewhere around the lake on this very critical thing of preserving the lake. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. You've highlighted something very important: sensitization and safeguarding of this protected zone. That is very important to note. We'll quickly move to Sharon. Sharon, your story mainly highlighted on illegal and substandard fishing nets that are still being used despite bans. What do you think are some of the systemic failures that are allowing these nets to continue to circulate and widely used in Lake Victoria?
Hi, Daily. So, on the question, the systemic failures that are there are, first of all, they are the porous borders. From the people that we talked to, we found that something like monofilaments is spreading because it's not locally manufactured in Kenya, yet it comes from the other neighboring countries at a very cheap price. So the porous borders is what allows for the illegalities to enter into the Kenyan side. Because when we focused on Mageta Beach, Mageta Island, sorry, Mageta Island has a number of beaches. In those beaches, you find some of them are very near the bordering countries like Uganda. You find like Mahanga Beach is near Uganda, and you find like those places where it's easy for someone to come in and out of the beaches. So it's easy for those monofilament nets to find their way into the beaches that are in Kenya due to the easy border, the easy crossing at the border, because there is even no official crossing when you're using the lake. The fishermen are allowed to move from one country to another using the lake, so they don't require border permits. So the porous borders also found that some of the illegalities, things that are labeled as illegalities in one country, are not necessarily illegal in another country. Something like the use of anchor lamps. In in Uganda, the anchor lamps are used widely, but when it comes to Kenya, you find that the authorities are advocating for the use of solar lamps. So when these Kenyan fishermen go to Ugandan side of the lake, they are being arrested because they are coming in with illegality, an illegal thing. Yet on the Kenyan side, this thing that is illegal is accepted. So apart from the porous borders, the other issue is lack of harmonized laws that support harmonized laws in Victoria. because if there were laws that are harmonized so that different fishermen can know when I cross to this side and when I cross to the other side, the laws are still the same. It will help in reducing the use of illegalities. Thank you, David.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. I think you have answered my next question. I wanted to ask you, maybe you can just add on some meat to what you've said. But on your point, I've gotten porous borders, illegalities that are varying, and also lack of certification as you're moving through different countries, and the lack of harmonized laws. So for the government, you've asked for harmonized laws for the three countries. But then my question would be, so, considering we are having lots of these illegal and substandard fishing nets, how has this affected the fishing stocks? And that is question number one. And then, how are the communities or the locals doing this? What are they doing to combat this? Is there anything the community is doing to combat this? Is there anything the government, the researchers, and local authorities are doing as well to combat this?
What is being done is, like I said, the BMUs are conducting trainings for the fishermen. They're working closely with the fisheries department, conducting trainings so that the fishermen can know which kind of nets are allowed and which ones are not allowed. Also, they are working closely. You find that the BMUs, because they man the beaches, they also, when they find such cases, what they do is they might not necessarily arrest the culprit that is using the illegal nets, but they often try to like just talk them out of not using it. And a lot of just sensitization is going on. I don't know if I got the first part of the question. Maybe you can repeat. Sorry about that.
I asked what the communities are doing, local authorities, and the government
So
to
also what the
combat
government
this.
is doing, their fisheries department in different beaches. So you find that these fisheries department are working hand in hand with the BMUs, but also for them, because they are the government arm, the fisheries department is the government arm. You find that in most cases, when they catch these fishermen with the illegal nets, they arrest them. They arrest them because they work closely with the police when they are going for those how is it called, those missions, because they usually have those missions where they go and they do like a random search at the beach to find out who is using the illegal nets or not. So when they go for those random let me just refer to them as missions, you find when they find those nets, they confiscate them after using them as evidence in court cases. These fishermen are arrested and they are taken to court where those nets are confiscated and they are destroyed. After they have been destroyed, you find these fishermen also pay some fines. But then the fisheries department was saying some of the fines you find they are not really expensive. They're just small fines which the fishermen can just pay and then they go back to their normal duty. So that was also an issue. The laws should be more stringent so that it can curb the use of the illegalities. And also, the other issue was that I spoke about the nets being cheap. And it's true they are cheap because you'll find that the monofilaments go for like 1,300 shillings per piece and they require like 10 pieces. Yet the nets that are supposed to be used go for like around 4,000 shillings, around about $40, and yet they require seven bunches, at least 10 or seven bunches of it. So you find it's easier to get the monofilaments than to get the required net. So they were saying that if the fines, the fisheries department was saying if the fines can be a bit higher, it will help in discouraging the illegalities from being used.
Okay, thank you very much, Sharon. That is very important to note. The illegal ones are cheaper than the legal nets. I'm quickly going to move to Tanzania. So, Yohani, Could you please let us know? You mentioned in your story, we realized that there was a lot of pollution, especially from lead. Let me just go back to it. From lead, oil, grease, and phosphorus. Could you please let us know what measures the local governments and communities can implement to reduce plastic waste and even this industrial waste from entering Lake Victoria at the shorelines? Yohani? I think Yohani dropped off. He seems to be having internet issues. I'm going to quickly move to Sarah and wind up with Kevin Omolo. I think I have one more question for Robert as well. So please stay on the call. Sarah, could you please let us know the impact? I know Sharon has touched a bit of this. In your reporting, you also mentioned the impact of substandard fishing nets. What is the impact that this has had on the fish stocks, the livelihood, and the lake's ecosystem? And have there been any local efforts to combat this?
Okay. So we didn't go so much into the fishing net issues, but we did interview some of the ladies selling fish in the market when the fish comes from the lake where it lands and people come in, to buy. And we found a few people with basins full of very tiny Nile perch. And we asked why these people were allowed to bring in such Nile perch and sell, and no one was arresting them or anything. And one of the leaders, the local leaders of that fish landing site at Gaba, took us aside and showed us a pile of illegal fishing nets that had been confiscated. And we also got to learn that some of these fishing nets are not confiscated by the UPDF, the fisheries unit. It is actually by the local authorities. They have taken it upon themselves to arrest the fishermen who come with the illegal nets because they realized it is at the end of the day, it's them that are losing out. They're losing on the fish stocks. We were surprised to find that we were at a lake, at a landing site where fish has been sold for more than 50 years. This is one of the oldest landing sites in Uganda and one of the busiest. But on that day, we found a truck from another lake, from Lake Choga, delivering fish to a landing site at Gaba on Lake Victoria in freezers. We also found delivery men from one of the fish companies in Uganda called Dialelo. So the women who are selling fish in the market, who are frying fish, are actually buying fish from these organizations. The fish they are selling is not actually from Lake Victoria because they no longer have enough catch to sell at the landing site. And they told us the reason they don't have enough catch, some of the reasons is because the illegal nets that have overfished. So they take out the fish before it reproduces. So whatever they are taking, there is no reproduction. So there is no more fish. Now they've taken it upon themselves to ensure that whoever is found with an illegal net is arrested and these nets are confiscated and burned so that people don't use them again because they want the fish population to grow again. Also, this fish that they are buying from outside is very expensive. If like a kilogram is I think the cheapest is 11,000 Ugandan shillings. So if you buy it at that amount and you're also going to resell, it's going to be very expensive. So meaning I, the consumer who's buying, will choose to go directly to Yaledo, where you're also buying the fish from, and we are buying at the same amount. So meaning I will not come back to the landing site to buy fish. So they are losing a lot of market, and some of them have even given up on the trade. They've left the market and gone to do other things. So yeah, there is a lot they are losing financially, especially, and they have taken it upon themselves to arrest the people who are causing this. But also we learned that there are circles, the financial circles where people go and borrow some little money to inject into their business. So I asked one of the ladies and she told me that they've made the loan interest a bit lower so that people can afford to buy the legal nets, which go for at least, I think, 50,000 Ugandan shillings. But one doesn't need just one net to begin. So what they do is they offer loans. The circles are for, within the fishing community only. So you go there, you get a loan, and they help you start off with a legal net. So those are some of the things that they're doing to get back their fish stocks.
Okay, thank you so much, Sarah. That was quite informative. Maybe now, before I switch gear back to the scientists, maybe allow me to ask this a question. You mentioned in your story about sand mining activities. You had documented that there was widespread illegal sand mining activities on the shores of Lake Victoria. What were some of the environmental changes that were observed, and how are these affecting both human and aquatic life?
Thank you. The sand mining is actually happening in the lake. Then the sand, after being mined, is brought to the lake shores for sale. We were not able to go to where the mining is happening because, this is done by very connected people, very big people in government. So you don't just go there to expose them. But I think there is one of the photos that I took that is in our story, showing the sand. If the sand, even after being brought back to the shores of the lake, it goes back into the lake where it is assembled. When the lakes bring the sand, they put it on the shores, then the trucks come and load this sand. But at that particular area where the sand is loaded from the lake, there is no way they can stop it from going back into the lake. So the demarcations there, you don't know where the lake starts or where it ends. There is a possibility that you stand thinking you're standing on the sand, but you're actually standing in the lake, and there is a possibility that someone will, drown into the lake. Then the other thing we found out is actually one of the scientists that we were speaking with is the one who let us understand that the Nile perch like to lay their eggs at the bottom of the lake where the sand is. So now when these people are mining the sand, when they pick the sand, they pick also the eggs of the Nile perch, meaning that we are losing a lot of fish in that way. There's also a lot of noise for the fish, and they cannot stay in an area where there is that noise. And they're using these heavy machines to drill the sand, to mine the sand. So the fish is living, the population of fish around the area where the sand mining is happening is very low. We also found out that in areas where it is happening, the population has, people are pushed back because this is being done by big people in government. So if there is a possibility of like evicting everyone from the area so that you don't see what is happening and report, that is also, done. Yeah, so those are some of the challenges that we found.
Okay, thank you so much. So let me go back to the science bit of it. Dr. Aura, there are a couple of issues have been raised with regards to illegal sand mining, illegal fishing, and pollution Lake Victoria. Could you please let us know what kind of regulatory or policy action would you recommend to governments to take to address all of these issues, to address the pollution aspect in Lake Victoria?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. May I highlight that the aquatic science is unique and is different compared to terrestrial science. There's a lot of uniqueness. So, and I want to thank you, the team involved, your journalists. You rarely rush to certain places to get information. And sometimes you can collect the data just once and you make conclusions without ascertaining the reality. Here is the issue. A lake, the way a lake is constituted geographically is that it's where anything will end up there. So in the end, we expect the water to be contaminated, to be polluted. And at the same time, you expect what we mentioned. That's very true. And that's when we agree. And if you are using untreated water, it has the effects, as I've explained in my previous presentation. But now what happens is that the fish was made in such a way that it has very unique features in its body. it has what we call gills. Now, the gills to sieving are such that a certain level of water is only consumed inside. We call it ingestion. And that's why I indicated that when you want to eat fish, ensure that fish is processed. And fishermen know, they remove the internal organs, visceral material, they remove the gills. So therefore, when you are doing any science, it's important even to measure the tissue. What is the heavy metal content in the tissue? What is the measure of microplastics in the tissue? And I want to say that these values are still below. But when you are talking about contamination, the lake has been contaminated, the lake is eutrophied, which is, of course, it has all those dangers as we mentioned. But when you look at the safety of fish, we are still within the WHO limit. So I wanted to put across that before I mentioned the question you indicated. And I would say that one key issue we have to do is sensitization and dissemination. And what we are doing here is an example of this. People have to know that the lake we have is the largest freshwater lake in the second largest freshwater lake in the. Apart from that, it's leading in fisheries production globally. So it's something very unique and very important for our environmental upkeep, which is key. So sensitization would be very key. Two, periodical reporting by regulators. If you are a regulator, you have to do periodic reporting so that we are understanding what is changing, what is not changing. Like, for example, you move around Kisumu, you hear that smell of ammonia and hydrogen sulfide. All this because of those discharges that are being decomposed by what? By bacteria. And it's going to be a problem to people who are with respiratory problems. So we are talking about periodical reporting, which is very key. The other thing is best agricultural, not just agricultural practices, environmental practices. And we are talking about, we know them, afforestation, not to prevent siltation and erosion from the upstream areas. The other key issue is impromptu visits by enforcers. And it would be very good as you, my colleagues, the journalists, you accompany them. If you see where there is that wrong discharge of raw sewage, and you take a video, you take a photo, and maybe you invite these regulators and enforcers to go with you, perhaps, and we believe this is one of the ways what it will help. The other thing is climate and pollution mitigation efforts, afforestation, terracing, diking, those are very, very key. Another one is upscaling, and I'm happy one of the journalists has mentioned this, and I appreciate you guys, the work you are doing. You understand this, and we appreciate. One, upscale. The other one is upscaling and upgrading of water treatment plants. The cities are growing, population are growing. So the amount of industrial and domestic discharge we are releasing is also increasing. And how we upgraded our water treatment systems. And maybe that is why, because of what we are talking about. The other issues, wetland conservation. Somebody has mentioned that, that's very appreciated. Wetland conservation and maybe using this wetland for just aesthetic use, not encroaching, aesthetic, something beautiful, something appreciative. So for tourism, would be rather than if you destroy them, they act as a buffer. And it's good that journalists have mentioned this. Another very important issue from your topic, you are talking about pollution by the guardians. And we are the guardians, not anyone. So we have to do what we call improved self-governance. Self-governance is that we have to, apart from the government coming, we have to regulate this by ourselves. We have to understand the importance, and we have to know we are the owners of the lake. And if we know we are the owners, and you know, if you own something or a resource, you will not destroy it. So this is what I would think is something that we have to infiltrate in our policy to ensure that it is adhered to and it's worked on. And of course, following the regulations and laws that are in place. If you are talking about illegal nets, what are we supposed to do to arrest or to ban or to give any other enforcement as required? So those are the facts that I propose. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Sensitization, periodic reporting, impromptu visits, climate and pollution mitigation. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Chris. That is well noted. I want to go back to Yohani from Tanzania. Yohani, you dropped off the call. Apologies for that. I just have one question for you. Please answer it in the shortest time possible. Um, My question to you was, how can enforcement and existing environmental laws be strengthened to effectively penalize polluters and protect the lake's water quality? I know this has been mentioned by Sharon. She mentioned that the penalties in Kenya are not very punitive. And what do you think can be done, especially, of course, in East Africa, but specifically in Tanzania? What do you think are some of the laws that can be strengthened to effectively penalize polluters? Yohani. Yohani has dropped again. Okay. Um, it's unfortunate. He really said that he had a point to make on that, but I think he's having unstable internet. We'll come back to Robert. Robert, this is your last question. I know you're still in the field. Thank you so much for sacrificing to be with us here. Um, could you please answer the same question I've just asked Yohani? What legal and policy reforms do you think are needed for proper gazettement and protection of the wetlands around Kisumu? Robert,
Okay, okay, Delhi. You just got
mhm.
legal and
Policy
well.
reforms.
Yes, largely and specifically, there's a need for clear demarcation and especially gazettement of wetlands. That has not been done very carefully because no villager, the common man living along the lake doesn't know what a buffer zone even means. Doesn't know. Even if they know, they don't know where it starts or where it ends. There are no demarcations. There are no notices to tell you this is a buffer zone. Do not, trespass. Do not do such a such. Do not plant. Do not cultivate beyond this. Then again, there's need for stricter enforcement of land use regulations because, especially in Kenya, there is very much political interference when say you come, relocate a population from along the lake. It won't be an easy exercise. The likelihood of coming across an MP, a legislator there, be it at a grassroots, MCAs, MPs, and even level, the point of governor, is very high. These environmentalists are hardly protected when they actually the buffer zones. Then I also think there should be the revision of updated environmental laws because even if police officers, environmentalists get you, say cultivating in a buffers or riparian land, there are outdated laws. The colonial laws are still running this protecting the environment, and I think there need to be a revision of these laws, like they're just doing with the traffic laws, and I think the sexual offense act laws in Kenya. Only because the land is just as good as rather the environment is just as good. The good of the environment is just as good as the good of our existence. I think that should be revised to go with the importance of environment, environmental whatever resources. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much for that. We are coming to the end of this session, so I'll quickly ask Kevin Omolo one question, and then anyone who has a question, please feel free to use the raise hand emoji. I'm going to give you a chance to ask the panelists the questions directly. In case you don't want to ask the question directly, please type it in on the chat box. My question to Kevin Omolo, I would want this to be a representation of the entire team, but in case any one of you has an addition to what he says, that is fine. So, Kevin, I know this investigation was done after the training you did here in Uganda, but I'd like to know what kind of impact do you hope this story will have locally and regionally, and is there anything you'd like to follow up on?
Okay, thank you very much, Billy. Probably most of these stories, I believe, would have impact, and some of them have already had impacts. Myself, I've had instances where I've received calls from some of the people that we interview who are victims of human-wildlife conflict. And the processes are now clear in terms of communication with the Kenya Wildlife Services on how they, the role of the people in terms of managing the wildlife and coexisting with the wildlife. And I think those who are also impacted have already been compensated. A number of them have reached out. And there is also discussions that are going on because I remember after doing the story, you remember there is also a project that you people supported of the community's dialogue around some of these issues. And I was invited as a panelist in one of the sessions organized by Justice for Lake Victoria. And we could see the stakeholders coming up with proposals on how best to take care of the environment, how best to take care of the animals so that they do not become victims of human wildlife conflict. Also, just like Robert said, the demarcations are not there. So there are calls, the increased engagement, especially by the youth, who are trying to ensure that the wetlands are protected so that people can maintain some distance between them and the homes of this wildlife. Because this is one of the reasons why the animals are finding their way out into the villages, into the communities, to cause the kind of havoc that they're causing. So I believe the impact is huge, but some of them were short term, some of them are long term. One of them, for example, as mentioned in the story by Dr. Aura, is that there is already some work going on to demarcate the lake, and this would help the users to understand which areas they can use, for example, for fish farming, use of cage fish farming, which areas can be used for transport, and many others as fish breeding and all that. So some of these long-term projects that are ongoing, and there are impacts of the kind of stories that we do around the lake. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Kevin. I would now give this chance to probably a lady, and that could be Sarah. Both Sarah and Sharon, in 30 seconds, given that Lake Victoria is shared across 3 countries, did you notice any emerging or simmering disputes over who is to blame or who should act first? In your reporting, did you notice any emerging disputes? Were there any blame games between the countries?
Thank you. On our side, we did not get that because we centered mostly around the Ugandan side. The only thing that we used from across was a study from Tanzania on microplastics. Yeah, but we did not go into the dispute and
Okay, thank you for that. I don't know whether Kevin, Robert, Sharon, did you notice any blame games of the countries? This country is blaming the other as you're covering your story?
For my part, what we got is the fishermen. Okay, they were saying, for example, for the case of Mageta Island, where I told you there are a number of beaches, and some of these beaches are also neighboring Uganda. They were just complaining that due to lack of uniformity in the laws, you find that something is illegal in this other country and it is not illegal in the other country. So there was that issue. For example, for the Omena fishermen, Mukene fishermen in Uganda, you find when the Omena fishermen from it's called Mahaga Beach. Mahaga Beach is the nearest to Uganda. You find when they go fishing on the other side, they are arrested because they are using the solar lamps. Because in Uganda, they're advocating for the use of anchor lamps instead of solar lamps. So you find when they cross with those lamps to the other side, they are arrested and they are penalized. So they were
Okay.
complaining that due to that lack of harmonized laws, it brings a lot of confusion because you'll find you're doing something right on this side, but when you go to the other side, it's wrong.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Guys, I've come to the end of the panel discussion. Thank you so much to the panelists, but please stay on call. There's a question directed to Dr. Chris. The question is, just a minute. Bernard is asking, are there any joint mechanism from the three countries sharing Lake Victoria to safeguard the lake? If not, do you think there's a way to bringing them this form of mechanism?
Thank you for the question, Bernard. That's a very good inquiry. You may take note that we have what we call the East Africa Community. Of course, it used to have the three East African countries, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, but it expanded to include Rwanda, Burundi, and of course, Congo. But of course, those ones are assumed to be in the basin because the Lake Victoria Basin is quite huge. But in this East African community, we have affiliate bodies. So we have the affiliate bodies. One body is known as Lake Victoria Fisheries Organization. So Lake Victoria Fisheries Organization that is headquartered in Jinja, Uganda, looks at matters fisheries and of course Lake Victoria in general. Therefore, it harmonizes and coordinates fisheries research and management in the lake basin. On this note, therefore, Lake Victoria Fisheries Organization has set guidelines, has set what I call policies for the three East African countries to implement. Remember, a regional body cannot enforce, it cannot regulate, so it has harmonized the policies that are required for implementation. So if implementation is not being taken 100% in terms of enforcement, it may not be the body to mention or to complain of. Number one. Number two, we also have what we call the Lake Victoria Basin Commission. So Lake Victoria Basin Commission is another affiliate of the East African community, but that one is focused on environmental or land use issues. Environment can touch even maybe the lake or the riparian areas. So for them, they look at environmental issues in the basin. And the headquarters for Lake Victoria Basin Commission is in Kisumu. So these are the bodies mandated to harmonize, and the word is harmonize and coordinate. Environmental, that's for LVPC, and fisheries for LBFO. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chris. On the last question, I think it goes to all journalists. I'll ask Yohani to respond to this one. In the process of reporting on pollution in Lake Victoria, how did you balance presenting scientifically backed evidence with real-life community-like stories and ensure that your story was both in-depth, emotionally compelling, and influential to policymakers? Yohani, you have come back a couple of times. I don't know if you're still here. Are you able to respond to that? How are you able to ensure balance in your story?
Thank you. I think these science stories have the connection with the lives of the people, and our stories, what we did, because we were doing, what we did is connecting impact of the pollution in Victoria to the lives of the people. Specifically, we based on the microplastic pollution and how the people can be affected by like using the fish or any aquatic living organisms. And how the things like equally how they can relate to water bodies diseases. And some of the people who are there, they felt like this issue is affecting their life. This issue is affecting, it's impacting their lives, and they have to care. They have to take care of Lake Victoria. They have to take care of their environment, and they have to ask those in power sometimes, and to be accountable to take care of our lake.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So I'm going to close this by asking Dr. Chris, in 30 seconds, could please let us know how the media, science, and engaged communities, what role the media, science, and engaged communities can play in building resilience, driving awareness and accountability across East Africa beyond this story?
Thank you. The media is very key, as you've indicated. Um, we are living in a world where there is a lot of trust that has been put in the media, because before you come up with information, you do some kind of soul searching and research. So the role would play is, allow me not to call it activism, but it's an element of soul searching and going to those specific institutions, whether policymakers, researchers, or consumers, to get the information. And the best that you've done, for example, in this case, to put this information in such a way that it raises some level of alarm. It gives policymakers a challenge for them to do something, which is quite key. And you've done it very well here. And I really liked the headline, by the way, polluted by the guardians, meaning guardians are ourselves, the owners. Such a kind of raising alarm is quite key. Another thing that I would suggest is that you could also lean more towards scientific reporting, scientific panel discussions, even on live mainstream media. This one, we are not seeing it taking place as much in the East African countries. We do much of politics. And of course, allow me to say that it's the media that helps in shaping the morals of our young people, the thinking, the imagination. So if we bring more of the STEM, the science subjects, if we bring more of even history, even geography thinking, and we enlighten it much better the way we are doing, not just here, but in other avenues, it will improve morals in our community, and moral is actually connected to our behavior. And this behavior is connected to the way we are polluting our lake, the way we are contaminating our lake. So before somebody does an illegality or a crime, he will think twice, because societies are being trained from that level. I would also recommend that the media goes further to come up with some issues to do with animation, advertisements that are environmentally that sensitize on environment, that do training on environment. More of this. This would be very. I would appreciate to see a cartoon on science. More or less the cartoons we are doing in politics. And I appreciate that what you are doing. You may think you are doing something small, but you are doing something big for the lake and for the world. In fact, the Lake Victoria is about the world. It's not even about East Africa. It's very useful to the world. So if we do more of this would be very appreciative, and it will improve, in fact, morality and behavior in our even in our science. It will improve our behavior. It will even improve the right or positive journalism, scientific journalism. And that's very key. I would appreciate, for example, if you go to a lecturer in any university seeking information, interrogate that information with other experts who are in the field, correlate, compare, validate, and then it makes so that it makes sense. And this is what you have done, and it's very good for me. And then the other last part I would also suggest the media to look into is how to marry the mainstream media, the YouTube we are doing with the social media. Because many young people are going to the social media. That's where they're learning, they're getting even behaviors, etc. So let's see how we can arrest their behavior. The younger generation, the Gen Z, let's see how we can arrest their behavior so that they can value journalism. They can value good reporting. And from there, we'll build the society, not just in science, but in our morals. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Chris. It's a pleasure to have you. You have educated us all, arresting the behavior of the society, particularly the Gen Z and across all generations. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our Science Wednesday. To close us off, we're going to have a quick Q&A session. The winner is going to receive a small package of appreciation. Please stay on. All the questions that are going to be asked are based on what was presented here. So I hope you are listening keenly to what our presenters were saying, Dr. Chris, Yohani, Sharon, Sarah, Kevin, and Robert. Prim, are you ready with the questions?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the journalists and the scientists for taking us through today's webinar. Your expertise has been able to help us understand some of these complex issues and has been very informative and inspiring. So the first question is, in the water quality assessments conducted across the three countries, that is Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, what was the most commonly detected indicator of contamination in the water in the lake? I will give you 4 options and you will choose the correct one. Let me just repeat this question. In the water quality assessments conducted across the three countries, what was the most commonly detected indicator of contamination in lake water? Number 1, heavy metals. Number 2, E. coli and total coliforms. Number 3, agricultural runoffs. And number 4, chemical oxygen demand.
They need to type the answers. Okay, we have 2 answers already from Teresia, Kevin, and Kofi. What is number 4, Prim?
The number 4 was chemical oxygen demand.
So we have 2 for chemical oxygen demand. So what is the correct answer?
The correct answer is E. coli and total coliforms. But Kevin is among the panelists.
Kevin, you're among the panelists, so you're not eligible to participate.
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Kevin, though, for answering. But following from that number 2, going forward, panelists are not eligible to participate. Number 2, Prim.
Okay, number 2 is, according to Dr. Chris, mention at least 3 most urgent risks to the lake and the communities around it. Mention at least 3 most urgent risks to the lake and the communities around it. He mentioned a couple of them, so just 3 of them and you will be the winner.
They should type on the chat box. Please type on the chat box your answers. The first one to get it correct. No.
Anyone?
No answers yet. Suzanne, Michelle, Jonas, Leonard, Catherine, Bernard, Annunciata, Kofi, Teresia. We're waiting for your answers. Okay, what is the answer for that frame? We have no.
Okay. All right. So he mentioned a couple of them. So number 1 is increased nutrient load. Number 2, destruction of wetlands. Number 3, shrinking of fish breeding grounds. Number 4, unsafe consumption of fish before proper processing. And then there was also increased cost of treating water. Yeah.
Okay, that is number 3. That is question 3 or number
That's
2?
2. That's 2.
Okay.
Okay, then number 3, what are some of the issues that were raised during the discussion that promote illegal fishing? I'm just going to give, you could give 2. If someone gives 2, they will have put in the answer correct. At least, what are some of the issues raised that promote illegal fishing? If you give me 2, you will have the answer. Do you have anyone?
No answers so far. Guys, try. We have some small Kamani will send your way.
Someone is saying I should repeat the question. What are some of the issues raised that promote illegal fishing? Of course, specifically to the discussion we had today.
There's a trial by Annunciata, inflation of fish price. Someone else, that's a good trial, Annunciata. Prim, please give us the answers.
Okay, number one is lack of harmonized fishing laws across the three countries. And then number two is absence of fishing certification and licensing systems. And then three is variations in how illegal fishing activities are defined. And then the last one is porous borders that allow easy cross-border fishing activities.
I can see Kofi's answer came just before you started reading. Is he right?
Let me see. I will check. Lack of standardized policies across the board and ignorance by the fishermen. Yeah, I think also ignorance was mentioned a couple of times by Robert.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I don't know.
So Kofi has gotten that one. So let's go to question.
Question
4?
I think, yes, 4. I wanted to, okay, I know that all of you know that Lake Victoria is the second largest freshwater lake in the world, but I wanted to ask which lake is the largest in the world? Lake Victoria is the second largest freshwater lake in the world. So which one is the largest in the world?
That one has to be the next 5 seconds. People are going to Google. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have one answer from Robert, but he's a panelist. Although that is not a question that was discussed. But what is the correct answer?
It's called Lake Superior, and it's shared by United States of America and Canada. The largest freshwater lake.
So no one has gotten it right. Last question, Prim, as we close.
The last question is, we have had quite a number of sessions here at Science Wednesday. Who can guess which edition we are at now? It's 22.
So we have had, we have 2 correct answers by Jonas and by Kofi. Teresia, this is not our last edition. We have several others coming. This cannot be the last. So Primrose, maybe ask one question that can break the tie between Jonas and Kofi. Probably on the population that is dependent on Lake Victoria.
Just a second.
Let me ask.
Okay.
Please let us know the population. Lake Victoria is shared by 3 countries, Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. The surface area is 68,800. Approximately what population is served by Lake Victoria? Give me an approximate number. A round figure, like 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, like that. Catherine Madenge has said 40 million, which is true. Now we have 3 winners. Now I need one question to break the tie. I need one question to break the tie. Primrose, do you have any other question?
Let me see.
Among the 3 countries in that share the Lake Victoria, which country has the highest share of Lake Victoria? Chap chap. 1, 2, 3, 4. Tanzania. Catherine has gotten it right. The winner is Catherine Madenge. Catherine, please send your message to me. Catherine, I presume you're Kenyan, so you have a Kenyan number, right? Yes, please send your message to me so we can send you the small token of appreciation to this number. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us through this launch of the of this cross-border stories polluted by the Guardian. Special thanks to the panelists, Dr. Chris Aura, Sharon Atieno from Kenya, Kevin Omolo from Kenya, Roberta Malemba from Kenya, Yohani from Tanzania, and Sarah from Uganda. Your second name is quite difficult. I really appreciate your time and your commitment to be with us this evening. We're looking forward to have you all in the next session of our Nile Science Wednesdays. In case you'd like to read the story, Polluted by the Guardians, I've shared the link over and over again. Here is the link once again in the chat box. Feel free to interact with it, read through the story, check out the database, the photos, anything you'd like to comment, let us know. You can email us at info.infonile.org. I will also share the link of this recording, this Zoom recording tomorrow, that is. Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate your company, your participation, and your presence here with us today. Have a wonderful evening. Bye.
Bye. Goodbye.
Bye and thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for good
You're
moderating.
welcome.
Okay,
Bye.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.